Georgia. Now I would like to invite our colleague Florian Kutzner from University of Mannheim, now Seabrook University as well, to discuss with us what motivates people to join energy communities. Florian, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Hi there. Thanks, Jo, for this great, very interesting presentation. It was very inspiring so far. I hope I can catch up with that. From the social science perspective here. So some heads up, can you see my slides?
Yes.
All right. So I'll take probably 10 minutes to get you the social science perspective on our community energy project we've been involved in, Decide. And let me transform this question to the question already in the outline, how to make people care. And I added how to make them stick with it, what they cared about, right? And some background, I mean, for quite some years now, I've been trying to encourage behaviors that are more climate friendly, right? From cycling more to recycling, to installing PVs, to using electric mobility, to install a heat pump, to eat less meat, to whatever, right? And it's been a bumpy road. First thing, if you confront people with something as existential as climate change, they are actually not utterly motivated to do something about it. And psychologically, one of the first barriers is that they just feel incompetent to contribute meaningfully. And they feel small and they feel not sufficient to do something about it. And what results, even if you mount very strong arguments about what's going to happen in the future, what results is helplessness and anxiety. Right? So you have to be very careful here. And what mounts is the motivation to be defensive and to deny and to doubt and second guess. Okay? And even if you then manage to create environments where they basically have to do the pro-climate thing, you nudge them, you create monetary or tax incentives to do it, what you see is rebounds everywhere. Right? You get them to buy an electric car and they leave their bike where it is. You hook them up to a carbon efficient energy heat source and they heat more, they get rid of their sweater or they build a pool, right? I mean, you get it everywhere. And large shares of the efficiency gains you have will be consumed over the next years by more usage. So this very bleak picture, right? And very motivates me a lot to be part of these projects here, because here something is different in these citizen energy or collective energy communities. And it's the we. And now that's my takeaway already, right? You can chill off now. So whatever we do, we try to do it in terms of we. But let me explain a little bit. What I mean by we is not the actions themselves. You can buy an electric car, you can install a PV on your roof because you yourself as the I wants it or thinks it's a good idea. But you can also do it in terms of a membership of a group. If you identify as part of a group, perhaps the scone skips, I'm sorry for the pronunciation, right? Perhaps something else, then things change, right? And these identifications, then you have something that is a collective and not individual pro-environmental action. Now, the first question is, what are these identities for us in the projects and more generally, more globally? And there, I mean, it depends. It depends from person to person, from context to context. And what we can do is we can find out what's the most suitable identity or social group that we can piggyback on. Right? For some people, it will be as broad as a global environmentalists movement. For other people, it will be the Scone Skip, or in one of our pilot sites, the Bad Hindelanger Klettersteig, the Via Ferrata towards 100% renewables. Right? If you identify as an activist of such a group, things change. Things are different than if you engage in the pro-environmental actions yourself. So what is different? Most obviously, what is different, it's easier to believe that the group can actually achieve something. That's one of the reasons why groups, social groups, are there in the first place. because they make us less feeble and less vulnerable than we on our own. So it's easier to believe that we can achieve something. And that in itself is motivating to do something. But it also changes the emotions you have. It brings you away from this kind of helpless anxiety state and towards a more energizing state where it's actually about anger or even moral outrage. And that is actually motivating a lot to change things. And what you are doing, right, what you are actually engaging in, then depends on the in-group norms. What does the group have set as their goal? Now, for us, of course, it's an energy goal, but many groups have many different goals. Preserving nature, preserving culture, making money, whatever it is, right? So the group, the more you identify with it, the more it's perceived as effective. And the more it creates this kind of angry, energized feeling, the more you're going to work towards the group goals. So that's the social psychological backdrop against it. Here, the Fritsche paper is actually a very nice inspirational read, also for non-psychologists. Now, what implications does this have for energy communities, right? And for our work here? And how do we try to frame it? Well, I think the foremost implication is capitalize on existing identities, whatever is there. It might be a church or a club or a local grassroots movement or whatever it is. Capitalize on one. I mean, sometimes I experience the projects as trying to create an identity themselves. Sometimes some brands manage to create brand communities, but it's actually quite effortful and it takes years. And probably the scope of our project is not enough, right? So we should piggyback, we should integrate into groups that are already out there. And then we need to add something. We need to co-create and instill an energy goal they might not have, right? To get our energy efficiency and carbon energy efficiency ideas in there. And another thing we can then do is foster a sense of collective efficacy. We can give feedback on what the group has achieved and what it plans to achieve. We can make tangible the services, just as Job just showed. We can make nice clips on what the idea behind the community is, so that they can go visually viral. I think can they symbolize what the contribution is. Then the sense of efficacy will strengthen. And in doing so, of course, we have to ensure, and that's it's a little bit of a trade-off. We have to ensure that people still trust the community. That also means we have to communicate honestly and with integrity, right? We have to communicate what the group cannot achieve and where it failed and where there's legislative boundaries. Right? We have to maintain the sense of integrity that we're not another marketing hype. And finally, we have to manage the collective emotion, right? Keep the fire burning. That's why the little flame here. Do not, and we do this in forums and we do this online and offline and in meetings, right? We neither must allow for group members to consume their pride of what they've achieved, neither to float and drift into kind of collective guilt feelings, because they're not energizing. But we need to keep this flame going, that there is an ultimate goal that's worth fighting for. All right. So far, so good. Now, here's a last word from me as a social scientist. When we asked the questions now for more than a year of how to make people care. And we review the marvelous projects that's been done with creative actions and some scientific research alongside. But what we find is there is not a lot of hard evidence of what actually works, because there's hardly any experimental tests. Sometimes that's not possible. If you have legislation will be applied for everybody at the same time. The sandbox example perhaps is different, right? But other things, marketing, the tools you offer, the dynamics you try to unfold, this you could actually test against a control group. And here's the idea. You set out targeting a group of people, and to some you apply an intervention and to others you don't. By this comparison, you learn what works. And I think in these stellar moments where this is possible in our projects, we should try to be doing that, to further our understanding of how to replicate these energy communities. All right, that's my 5 cents, roughly 10 minutes. I'm happy to take a couple of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Florian. I actually have one quick question. That's how do you see this motivation? Do you see that this motivation is different across EU, or would you say it's pretty much similar within different countries?
Of course, it's different across the EU, and it's different across situations, right? Right before we chatted about the motivation now for climate neutrality, where everybody who's involved in tourism or hospitality is concerned with economic survival, right? Motivations vary quite dramatically, and I'm not so sure it makes sense to ask whether there's stable differences between countries, because we want to push these things in all countries. So we should ask how to motivate people, rather than what's the differences between them.